Welcome to Manu Forti Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I'm your host, Reggie Key, and today I have with me Ashia Bello, my birthday twin.
Hey,
What's happening?
I'm hanging out. I'm hanging, just chilling, building, growing.
Chilling, building, growing. What movie was that where they had like three? That sounded like The Wood. You remember The Wood where it was like chilling? I can't remember the three in that same rhythm, that same cadence. That's funny. You'll maybe have to go back and watch that movie now.
See what I'm saying? And now I gotta watch it too, so I can remember.
Yeah. But check it. I appreciate you. I know that you are a busy person. You was just telling me how you was at like four services yesterday, with you being a director of music at least two churches, right? I know that you're busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to help me help you.
Yes.
I believe that you're already operating in what my book defines as genius, but it's just good to kind of walk through and make sure that you see it. Because I feel like even though you may be already operating it, there's something about putting the right label on it that can just tweak it and get it to the next level. All right. So that being the case, my very first question that starts off all these interviews is, Ashia, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
That's such a good question. I guess it depends on how you look at a genius. There's two thoughts behind a genius, right? One thought is someone who has mastered a particular area or place of knowledge, right? Or someone who's operating in a particular place of knowledge exceptionally well.
Okay.
So if we use the second part of it, I'm gonna say, I wouldn't say that I consider myself a genius, but I would say that I would say that there's room for growth for me to become a genius in my area of expertise. I feel like I'm still learning and growing. There's still so much to learn. There's still so there's still a level that I can get to, better.
Yeah.
I guess. And so I think I wouldn't classify myself as a genius yet, but I think I'm on
your way. Yeah. All right. So I like that. You said either mastering or operating in something that you do well. So most people, that was a well thought out answer. Most people are like, nah, not really. Right. So I like that you're not saying flat out no. I also sense a certain aspect of humility where you're like, I can't call myself a genius, can I?
I shouldn't be. Yeah.
That feels right. And so I want to kind of get into that because humility, it does play a role in why most people are like, I can't say that about myself, right? But true humility, as it relates from a biblical perspective, is not thinking too lowly or too highly of yourself. So the lowly piece, we sometimes get this false humility where we're like, well, I can't say this about myself, right? But I mean, for believers,
even though I think it.
Yeah. But for born again believers, like, we know that there's power in our words. Death and life is in the power of the tongue. We also know that everything that is anything good about us is not even about us. It's about this portion, this inheritance that we receive from God through Jesus that restores us to this place where we're made in his image and likeness. And there's nothing wrong with saying that I'm made in the image and likeness of the creator of the universe because it's in the Bible. Right. And even further, what the world calls genius, I've looked at it as the scriptures call the mind of Christ. And so, me asking you if you're a genius is really asking you, have you tapped into, do you access the mind of Christ in what you do?
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. So I like that in your answering, you didn't attribute genius to like something academic. You already at least know that it's something that you have special expertise in. And that's the beginning of understanding as it relates to the mind of Christ, or this genius that you do have access and do possess. Most people, I feel like, attribute genius to like high IQ, what your GPA was, how high it was in high school or college. And that is one type of genius, but that does not encapsulate all genius.
Absolutely.
So that's one
Absolutely.
of the first ways to deconstruct this word. And my next question for you is like, who comes to mind? First person, no right or wrong answer. Who comes to mind when you hear this word genius?
When it comes to what I do specifically, probably I'm gonna say Jacob Collier. He's a name that a lot of people may not know.
Mm-hmm.
He's a musician. He's literally the best at what he does.
All
Like
right.
he can play any instrument. He's self-taught, but he's accessed the theory of it, the understanding of it. Um, if I had to consider someone, especially in this time right now, who's
Mm-hmm.
operating in full genius musically, it would have to be him. I
Okay.
mean, he's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a producer, he's a composer. I mean, he's I, um I'd venture to say that he is mastering music.
Okay. All right. That's a new
And
name for me.
yes, Jacob Collier, yes, he
All
is
right.
mastering music. If you get a chance, you got to look him up
Yeah.
because
Yeah. You
he's
put me
incredible.
on game. I'm supposed to be putting you on
Yes.
game. You put me on game. Okay. Now, so when I ask this question, I like how you're staying in your element, though. You're like musically speaking, right? Because there's one name that comes up universally when I ask this question that is the reason why there's not more people saying that they possess or have access to this genius, and that
Mhm.
name is Albert Einstein.
That is so interesting.
Everybody, whether I'm doing one-on-one sessions or whether I'm doing like when I go into schools and do these workshops virtually and in person, all the kids when they raise their hand, by and large, everybody says Albert Einstein, right?
I did not go there at all. I
That's
I
good
mean,
though. I like that.
I know that there's so many moments where I've seen people do things that
Hmm.
they're, that they operate in well. And I, without even thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, they're a genius. Like, oh, that's a genius, right? And it's not because they're calculating numbers or doing,
Right.
they're just extremely gifted at what they've chosen to do in life. And to me, the ability to tap into what you're amazing at and continue to grow in it, to me, that's genius.
It is. It is. And so
Yeah.
that you've been exposed to enough things and enough people to understand this. But one thing that you have to have in order to understand how genius works, exactly how you described it, is exposure. And the
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate thing is a lot of people don't have the right amount of exposure to see enough variety in it to be able to say like, no, this exists in several different lanes. And then to take it one step further and say, if it exists in several different lanes, then maybe I have a lane too,
Right. Right.
right? So before I delve into Albert Einstein a little more, I want to back up and talk about Jacob Collier a little more, because there's one thing that you said that was very tuned in on. You said that he's self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting about the last time I presented this at our church, it was at the Gifted Conference in 2021. And leading up to that conference, Apostle had said something very interesting in one of the sermons that I latched on to, and I said, I'm using that. I'm coming back to
Mm-hmm.
that. And he began to say he didn't call it genius, but he was talking about, hey, there's something that you learned that there's a scripture, I can't remember what it is, but it says there are things that no man has taught you, but that the Holy Spirit has taught you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can begin to figure out what that is, go back to your childhood and figure out what was it that you did that nobody had to teach you. It just kind of
Mm-hmm.
manifested in you, and it may have come at a later date or a later age. But that's the thing that your genius is revolving around. This thing
Right.
that is birthed in you that is a gift, again, bestowed to you, but then taught to you by the Holy Spirit, though. So
Right.
that's another way to look at it. So all right, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget that because I heard you
That's
say
a
it.
really cool spiritual way to look at it. That's dope.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
gotta I gotta know that scripture in my heart though. I don't have it committed to my heart just yet, but it's in there though. It's like ragged, it's in there. Um,
Yeah.
so jumping back to Einstein, there's a quote that I want to say to you that purportedly comes from Einstein that really sheds more light into where we're going with this interview. All right, you ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right, you like to hear it? Here it go. I don't know if you remember that
Right.
from color. All right. It goes like this. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Right.
How's that hit you? Like, how do you interpret that?
You know what? It makes me think about how in the school system, I automatically thought about the school system and how there's this battle around standardized testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
how the reality is every kid just doesn't learn the same. They don't learn at the same pace. They don't retain knowledge the same way. Everybody doesn't learn the same. If that's like putting a elephant, a lion, a giraffe, a fish, everybody on the same track and expecting them to reach the end the same way, and they're not going to. And so I immediately thought about that, and I thought when a person is in the wrong element, they're never going to reach their full potential
Exactly.
because they're always going to be striving to be something that they're not, or do something that they're not meant to do, or that they're not made for.
Asia, your minister hat is coming out. You're getting all up in the sauce. You are using words. You are getting ahead of the schedule, like full blown. You're gonna see in a couple minutes how well you're getting into this. I want you to know that your ministry is not limited to music. The Lord has anointed you to do some things that's not relative to music, man, because you just full blown got into the crux of the next 10 minutes of this conversation. It's amazing what you
The
just.
funny part is you don't even know how what you're saying is just so hilarious right now to
The
my
spirit's
life.
going to come up in this interview like for the next 30, 40 minutes. You should know.
Oh Lord, it's so good to me. Okay, keep going.
All right. Yeah, the spirit is funny. So to your point, and you came up with this whole track. You named like 5 animals off the rip. Did you just do that? It's like I told you not to have stuff
Yeah,
canned.
I seen it's like I seen a picture in my head. Like you got an elephant, you got a giraffe, you got a fish over here, you got a cheetah, a lion. You put them all up in the same, you put them all on a racetrack and be like, get to the finish line. They're not gonna make it.
Somebody's not going to make it.
Somebody's
Somebody's
not gonna
going to
make
be
it.
left behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have these systems, and it's so funny that you mentioned schools because we have these systems in place that are robbing people of their genius because of what you just said. They reward the person. The track is built for, like a zebra, right?
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
keep rewarding the zebra, but not looking to the fish that's like, well, I'm not even in my right lane. I'm not even in my
Exactly.
right element. How am I supposed to thrive? And what do we end up doing? We end up marginalizing the fish and leaving
Yep.
the fish to be like, something must be wrong with me because I can't finish this race. And it's
And
like, yeah, but if
we actually put that on the fish though. We'd be
we
like, oh, the
do,
fish not getting it. So maybe we need to move the fish to this classroom right here.
which goes back to the quote from Einstein. Like I have a picture. One of these days I'm gonna show this picture in the interview, but it's like this huge tree trunk, and the quote is on the tree trunk, and at the root of the tree, it's this little fish. Eyes are bugging out, and it's just like I just don't feel right. Like I'm trying to hold
Yeah.
on. Trying to hold on to this tree doesn't feel right. I mean, the tree is built for. Einstein was a bear. Like that dude climbed trees, right?
Right.
And I'm not trying to take anything away from Einstein, but we have to stop. We have to stop allowing people, including ourselves, from measuring us according to what they define genius to be, and make
Right.
sure it's being defined according to our skill set. Because to your point, the mastery and the operation comes once we are in our right lane. And
Right.
you know your lane where you at least started, and you're like, that's how I should measure my genius, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's good, but a lot of people, because of what they've gone through in the school system or in their neighborhood or in their community, have accepted this misdiagnosis that, hey, you don't have anything special.
Mm-hmm. And I've even in my lane, I've experienced that. Even like I've been in church my whole life, and I've experienced that even in that lane,
Mm-hmm.
because my approach to singing, my approach to worship and ministry is completely different
Right.
than most people. So I always find myself, in this place of comparison where I'm like, oh, I can't sing that like that. Like, are the people going to love it? Are they, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Or am I going to be able to, do well here because, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So I've even found myself in that place unconsciously, just even in
I
my
don't
own
know.
lane, like, dang.
I don't know what it is about us that makes us do this all the time. Now, I do know this, like Prophet Joel got this on the inside of me. 2 Corinthians 10:12 talks about comparing yourselves to yourselves and how you shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's like the hand comparing itself to the hand, to the
To
foot,
the head
and
or
being
the
like,
foot.
or to the
Mm-hmm.
head or the eye, and being like, well, I don't function like that, so I guess there's no need of me. The scripture talks about
Right,
that
right.
over in 1 Corinthians 12. So it's like we do have to get out of this habit of comparing ourselves to somebody else, because it's going to manifest uniquely in us, different from someone else, right?
Correct. Right.
So even within our own lane, I mean, ministers do that. I'll get up sometimes and hear my wife speak, and I'm like, doggone it, I can't do that like her. No, I shouldn't. I shouldn't
You
be speaking
shouldn't do
like
that
that.
like her, right?
You're one, but no, that's not how this works, right? So in that, I want to talk about. No, I don't want to go there yet. I want to just get in on this Genesis. I was going to go to the first component of this equation that God gave me to unlock
Mm-hmm.
genius. That's your passion. There's 3 components
Mm-hmm.
that God showed me. That's in this book, and it's
Mm-hmm.
passion, talent, and purpose. All right.
Got
So
it.
we'll get into that in a little bit, but I want to hang my hat here on this distinction really quickly, because you've already used so many of the words that I was going to use that describe this Genesis as it relates to this fish.
I'm
Because the
sorry.
fish, no, this is great. I'm don't
Mm-hmm.
apologize. It's like it's really dope. So the fish is out of its element. It's out of its lane,
Mm-hmm.
trying to hold on to this tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's eventually going to happen to the fish if it doesn't get into its right element?
It's gonna die.
It's going to die. And I see too many geniuses dying because they're not thriving in a place that they weren't meant to be in the first place.
Absolutely.
If you were to take this fish out of water and put it in its element, you would see right away what it was designed to do. This thing would just come to life
Right.
and take off. And you'd be like, wow, like that's all it took.
That's right.
It would go from struggling to climb this tree to thriving in the
Mm-hmm.
water. And that's really what this is all about. I already see you thriving, but we're gonna see if we can't just get it just elevated to a little higher standard. All right.
Yeah.
So that gets us, let's go into passion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, many people define passion as it relates to love. And when I talk to kids, because I got to engage kids really quickly, you only got a little bit of time before they start losing interest. So one of
Mm-hmm.
my secondary questions outside of asking them, are they a genius? I say, hey, look, tell me what you hate though. And kids fire off. They got all manner of stuff they hate. And I'm like, that's good, because in fact, I relate the thing that you hate to passion. I don't talk about love, even though they're kind of related. It's like 2 different sides of the same coin,
Mm-hmm.
because the thing that you actually hate oftentimes is tied to something that you love in the first place. I'm gonna give you an example
Mm-hmm.
in my life. I love hip hop, but I hate where it is right now. I
Right.
detest what the radio allows to get airtime, because I'm like, you're not using the platform in the best way that it could. So hip hop
Right.
went from one of the things that it did, because it was fun, it was party, but one of the things that it did, it provided a voice to the voiceless, and shed light on the missing resources and the damages of our minority communities in America, and said, look, this isn't right. But then something happened where once it became lucrative, it went from highlighting what was wrong
Mm-hmm.
as a means to correct it to glorifying what was wrong,
Right. Right.
ultimately elevating it. And I'm like, no, that's not how this is supposed to work. So I hate
Right.
where it is right now, but I love the music.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna ask you, like, what is it that you? Well, this may be 2 different answers. So I'm gonna ask you, what's your passion as it relates to what you hate? So I'm going to combine the 2 into one. Tell me what you're passionate about, but you have to think about it in context of what do you hate though?
That is a very is an interesting question, because I don't know if my passion necessarily has much to do with what I hate. I mean,
Just tell me as
um,
before I start
and
talking
I don't
about
even
hate.
know if I'm allowed to say what I hate out loud.
Why not?
What I
So
hate.
hold up,
Okay.
it's rules. All right, you just reminded me. There's a rules to this. There's a rules to this.
Okay.
Whatever you talk about that you hate, it can't be a person. It can't be. I don't want to hear no name out your mouth.
No, okay, not a person. It's not a
Because we're
person.
not hating people, but we're
No.
hating things that make us feel like a fish out of water. But before you even
Right.
get into that, tell me what your passion was. Before I started redefining what passion is, what would you have said your passion was outside of what you hate?
I mean, I would generally say that my passion is music,
Yep.
but right, because I that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, I think what I'm passionate about, because it's something that I struggle with, I think what I'm passionate about is helping people figure out who they are.
That's funny.
Okay. So that I so
Okay.
through music though, I feel like I want to do that through music. So the music per se is not the passion. I
It's
just
not.
use the music as an avenue. The passion itself is helping people figure out who they are. And that does relate to what I hate, because what I hate is how the institution of church has become about self.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there's this self promotion that happens,
Uh,
and it's not allowing people the it's I think people are forgetting who they are in the kingdom,
yes.
right? Like I think people are forgetting that we are kingdom, and they're forgetting how we're supposed to maneuver in the kingdom. So what I hate is the lack of understanding. Oh no. Okay.
You're good.
What I hate is the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge, the lack of teaching um of who we are in the kingdom. And I think that I think then the passion relates. I don't like going to church every Sunday and you know people aren't being built up
Yeah.
as who they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we
I
like
do.
they're being built up, but like in a really natural, selfish sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there because
Yeah, because you just dropped a lot. Like birthday twin, you crazy. Because first of all, this is not supposed to be about me. I'm not supposed to focus on me at all. But your passion, one of the things that you said is one of my passions. One of the things I hate is when
Mhm.
people don't know who they are. And the reason why I hate it so much is because one, that could have lost me at a young age because people kept trying to tell me who I was and giving me all these messed up titles. But I, for whatever reason, I didn't fully accept them. And
Yes.
it made me buck against like when somebody starts to try and put this label on, especially as an African American male, somebody looks at
Mhm.
me and says, "Oh, here's who you are, sir." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. That's not who I am. No, I don't want you to define me that way, right?
Mhm.
You're an athlete. No, not necessarily. I have athletic capacity, but I'm not gonna build myself up according to this athleticism that you keep attributing to people that look like me, right?
Right.
But it's just funny that we share the same thing. Like I hate it when people don't
Mhm.
know who they are, because if you don't know who you are and somebody else comes along with this self-righteousness that says, "Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you who you are so that you make sense in my world."
Right.
Because hey, black man, I need you to have this label of you're unsafe, you're dangerous, so that it makes sense in my world when I see you, how to react and respond to you. That's good for your world, but you are destroying my world in doing that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
if
And
and if
I mean, I'm not young, but there are days when I'm like, man, I don't really know who I am. Like I'm trying to figure that thing out. And it's burdensome for me as an individual,
yeah,
but it's more burdensome for me as a whole, because I know that there's so much more that we could accomplish if we all just knew who we were.
we all just knew. Right.
We
Because
knew.
you won't get distracted and pulled to the left and pulled to the right if you're like, nah, that's you got to be centered. And
Yeah.
as much as you know that your name is Asia Bello, you should know the second thing you should know about yourself when you look at yourself in the morning is I'm a genius though. And I have
Mhm.
something to contribute to the world. So when somebody else comes and tries to put something on you, like, no, that don't, it's like water off a duck's back. That doesn't vibe with me. That
Mhm.
doesn't align with the mind of Christ that's in me. That doesn't align with the genius that I've identified. And it's so important because if you don't know who you are, you'll eventually begin to look at the imagery, like in hip hop, that says, hey, look, this is who you are because these people look like,
Right. Right.
but it's a facade. It's not real. But if you're like, I don't know who I am, but this is all I see. This is all I hear. Maybe I am this.
Right.
And
Right.
now,
Right.
like, you're literally starting to die. Your genes are starting to die because you're out of your lane. You're out of your element because you don't know who you are and you're searching, but
Mhm.
you're going into this thing that other people have defined for you.
Right.
That's a death sentence as far
Yep.
as I see it, to be real.
Yep. Mhm.
So I want to give you a really strong example of what this looks like. You've already mentioned, you already got all up in the sauce. And I'm gonna call back to something you said earlier, because you started talking about the school system. And what you were saying was spot on. And I'm gonna give you a real life example. So a couple years back, I was asked to come to a school and spend some time with some little boys, about 10 of them, on a weekly basis. And I had just come up with this genius equation. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna talk to these kids about genius. Now, these 10 little boys were in the third, fourth, and fifth grade, but they stayed in one class all day. You already saw it. You were talking theoretically. I'm talking, I actually see this though. Third, fourth, and fifth graders all in the same class. They're all on IEPs, which is what, the individual education plan, which we would have called special ed back in the day. And it had labels like ADD, ADHD, all these, emotionally disruptive, violent, or whatever. And these little boys, of course, when I was like, hey, I want to talk to y'all about something. Hey, do you know that each of you are a genius? Their first response was, they was offended. They were truly offended that I actually tried to affirm them in something positive, which lets you know that they had come to grips with these other labels that had been placed on them.
Right.
So that's one thing. So I'm like, okay. And then I went to my second question, which I knew was going to get a great response. I was like, well, tell me what you hate though. And though these little boys will argue, fuss, and fight with one another about all manner of stuff, they all universally said the same thing. And I want you to think back to this fish. What makes the fish feel out of water is this system, this tree, and this person or people who keep coming and saying, climb this tree, climb this tree, climb this tree. And the fish is like, okay, I don't feel right.
So they all hated school.
Thank you. They all hated school. And they was like, yeah, well, now what you gonna do, Mr. Key? Bye. They thought they had jacked my whole thing up. And I was like, hey, I'm glad you said that, because I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't hate school. I understand why you hate school, but let me take it a step further. You hate school because you're a future educator. And it was like, oh, snap. What you just said though? And it was like, if they could have like just phased out of the room, they would have, they tried, they like backed away from me. I'm like, no, don't back away. Like, come here. Like, let me explain it to you. And I explained what you said. I'm like, there are like 7 different learning styles. The schools only really teach from 3, like visual, auditory, and left brain, like a logical thinker. But you're probably creative, or you're probably kinesthetic. You got to move around, or you're probably expeditionary. Like you got to touch with your hands, but you're told like, keep your hands to yourself, do this, don't do that. Right. And so now, because this learning style is not being, the information that they're supposed to be learning is not packaged within their learning style. It's like a foreign language to them. They're like, I don't understand.
That's right.
And I don't feel right. I feel like I feel dumb now, like the fish. I feel out of place now. And instead of nurturing that and saying like, okay, and this is the system, the school system is broken because of this. Because there's not a teacher who has that learning style, and there's not even room to get a teacher that has the learning style that matches the teaching style that matches the learning style of their students. There are going to be some that are going to be left behind. I don't care how many presidents say it, children are getting left behind. But the thing is, like, you're marginalizing the solution, because these I call them future educators, because if instead of running away from the thing that they hate, they were driven towards it, which is what passion does. Passion drives you towards a thing. If they say, hey, look, I'm going to take my learning style and make it a teaching style. And now when I go into a classroom, when I start teaching, there's going to be someone else who has the same learning style as I did, and they're going to pick up on it.
Right.
Build a school system around that and begin to have these classrooms that are set up by learning styles, because there's more opportunities and more teachers with diverse learning styles, then you're beginning to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's revolutionary. And so every sector, every industry in the world, every mountain, as we call it, has this room to address a systemic error in this way. All of us are at work somewhere, whether you work for yourself as an entrepreneur, or you work in corporate America, or you work wherever, and there's some things that you hate about where you work.
Right.
It's some things that you always talk about. Like, I hate that it's this way. I hate it here. Right. And if you find yourself talking about the same thing over and over again, and then this comes out your mouth, somebody need to do something about that.
Yeah.
Guess who the somebody is?
You.
it's agitating you because you were put there to fix it. God put you in that circumstance, in this region. He had you born in this generation to experience whatever it is that you're experiencing. Because when he looks out on the world, he sees its brokenness, and he already put the solution on the planet. He was like, this brokenness that the world is in because of sin, I need somebody to fix it. I need somebody that look like me, that talks like me, so that we can begin to fix it. And to your point, if we don't know who we are in that most simple manner, like we're put on this earth in the image and likeness of God, we're walking around clueless and the world stays broken. Satan continues to run amok because he's tricked us into forgetting whose image we're made in, because he knows the minute that we understand who that is, who we are, it's a wrap for him. Right. So I've been talking for a little while though. Let me see how you're going to forecast where I'm about to go next.
Wait, you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, you got a response to that? I've been talking a little too long. What you think about that?
No. I mean, I'm totally in agreement. I'm totally in agreement. And like I said, I've experienced that, looking at myself and wondering, okay, what am I supposed to do? Like, who are you? And not knowing what to do next. It keeps you stagnant. It keeps you bound. It keeps you, it keeps you from accomplishing a lot. Because then you get stuck and you be like, well, I'm just not going to try. I'm just not going to go this direction. I'm not going. And even speaking about those boys, like I was agreeing with that too. Because like my son is like that. He's very hands-on. He got to touch and be doing something. He has a lot of energy. When they were in school and they were sitting behind the computer, he would be getting up like every 5 minutes, messing with toys and pencils and stuff. And he doesn't do well with this. You know what I mean? And so it might seem like, oh, he's not progressing or he's not smart, but he's just, or distracted, but that's just not his style of learning. So, I think what's sticking out to me in this part is the fact that how much it can keep you bound and stagnant, how much it can keep you stuck in a place. Yeah.
And it's all about this element. What is your element? What is your lane? And being confident enough to advocate for yourself, or in your position as a mom, to advocate for your child and be like, this is not the way my child learns.
Exactly.
You need some other opportunities.
We need to find another way.
Yeah, watch when you put him in his lane though. Watch him thrive. Right. So I've talked to 2 people over the last 4 weeks who were learners like your son, and they were like, they had one teacher who saw it and was like, yeah, just walk around the classroom. It's okay. But not everyone gets that experience.
Right.
And so, like I said, we're leaving behind a generation of people who need to be equipped to begin to repair what's broken. Because God will grieve our hearts with what grieves his heart. That's where that passion comes from.
But that's another reason why it can continue to be broken, because you let these people slip through. Now they're doing this thing, this No Child Left Behind thing, and let's just pass them. And so now they're moving on to the next level, ill-equipped.
Yep.
Ill-equipped, and they're growing up ill-equipped.
And feeling like, I don't feel like I belong though.
And still feeling like they don't belong. And so now we're having this entire generation that is ill-equipped and ill-informed and feeling like they don't belong. That's why everybody's trying 1,000,000 things. Let me try this. Let me go here. Let me buy crystals. Let me do this. Let me change my body. Let me change my, we got all these people that are searching for all of these things because they're like, well, I don't know. So maybe this is who I am.
Yeah.
And just ill-equipped, ill-informed, and there's a gap now.
Minister Asia, you getting it. You are getting it. You're bringing a lot of different components into it that haven't been. I've done this maybe a dozen times now, and I'm hearing stuff in this conversation that I've never heard before, because it all works. It's like reading poetry. The person's interpretation of it is not, it's a truth. And I like how you're interpreting. I like how this is hitting you, because this is how it's going to clarify in your mind, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? So I'm going to pick up on this one last thing as it relates to passion, and then I'm going to move to talent, because you already went there like 15 minutes ago. I'm going to come back. But I just want to reiterate this in case the people watching missed it. Your passion, the thing that drives you, the thing that you look around in the world and you see this, it's like a David and Goliath. You look around, you see this Goliath, like, ain't nobody gonna do nothing about this dude. Like, he's misrepresenting, he is talking bad about the kingdom of God. Nobody cares about this. Oh, where are my 5 smooth stones? I'm about to take this dude's head off. Like, that thing that was in the land that the Lord was like, that's an abomination that needs to get dealt with. He identifies, he's always looking to partner with his creation, us, and be like, hey, take that out though. You see that? I've given you authority. I need you to take that out. And when you identify it and when you begin to lean on my understanding and my wisdom, then I'll show you how to, because you're like, this thing is huge. Like passion is never addressing something small. It's
Right.
large. And it impacted you, you know, when you were a child, maybe, and you were like, I didn't like how this made me feel. And when you get older, you're like, I hate when I see that. I know what that feels like. I see it impacting more people. I want to do something about it. And that's from God. Talent is not just God-given. Passion is God-given as well. We are
Right.
told that if we love the Lord, we should hate wickedness. And that wickedness comes up in the brokenness that's in the church, or in the world, rather.
Right.
So having said that, I want to move over into the next component of this genius equation, which is talent. And you began to shift back when I first introduced passion to you in this particular context. You began to shift already and realign yourself to this formula, because you said, I love music, that's my passion. And then you corrected and said, no, the talent is the music. The talent is what I'm doing. But how your purpose in life, Asia, I'm getting to the last part of the equation, is to identify your God-given talent and recognize that it is a tool to address the thing that's broken in the world that informs your passion.
Right.
The thing that's broken is the thing that you hate. And you're like, well, how do I fix it? And God will just say, well, what did I put in your hand? Like he did with Moses. It's not, you don't have to search for it. It's already within your possession. And he's like, man, if you just pick this up and apply it to this passion, you're going to unlock your genius. You're going to access the mind of Christ.
Right.
So how's that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes it can get confusing when you don't know the difference, because you'll take your talent and be like, this is what I'm supposed, like, I've been singing my entire life. And a lot of people generally, they'd be like, oh, this is like, how come you don't have a record? Or how come you don't have this? Or how come you're not a big superstar? Because you can sing so good. And I'd be like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily equate to purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's been that trying to figure out, okay, what's the difference? Purpose, passion, talent. Okay. And how do you use them all together? And so, yeah, that definitely resonates with me, because even though this is my talent, I do know that there's a bigger purpose. There's a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I will use my talent, and I'm sure that it'll get me into a lot of great places for me to be able to operate in purpose.
That's biblical too, right? It says that your gift will open doors for you and bring you before great men, right?
Exactly.
And so the thing that I want to stress too, I heard you say this and it's slipping away from me, so I'm hoping I get it back. I'm gonna go to another industry altogether. Sports. A lot of times when I talk to athletes, they'll say like, well, my passion is basketball, my passion is soccer, my passion is football. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But then when I begin to redirect and reconstruct this thing according to this genius equation, I'm like, no, the thing that you do on this field, that's your talent. But how do you use it off court, off the field? That dictates your genius. And I'm gonna give you another real life example. I don't like this dude, but I respect his genius. LeBron James.
Oh, okay.
LeBron James, his talent is clearly basketball, but once he got his rings, once the resources and endorsements and everything came, he wasn't just settled with, I'm gonna get my mama a house, I'm gonna give me a couple cars, couple chains. He did something genius as it relates to his hometown of Akron, Ohio. A couple of years ago, and I've never met him, I've never heard him talk about this, but I would be willing to bet that the thing that he hates, one thing, because I hate several things that are in the world that are broken. One thing that I believe he hates is how he grew up and did not have a functioning public school that he could operate in, because there was a lack of resources. It was impoverished, right? And so he had to go to a private school just to maintain the level of academics that he needed to grow and develop his talent in basketball. And so what did he do a couple years ago? He built from the ground up a public school that had the most recent computers, all the resources, the best teachers. And like I said, he didn't make
Wow.
it private though. He made it public because he's like, I
Wow.
want everyone to have access to this the way I did not have access to it as a youth. That's genius.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. That's how it should work. Because first and foremost, it's though we, this humility where it's like, should I call myself a genius? Like, if you want to improve the lives of others, you have to begin to see yourself in this light, because you can't fully access and give other people this opportunity to see their genius until you realize your own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how you fit into the world and what your contribution is supposed to be.
Yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
Around, just like ministry is centered around what broke you though. What broke you or almost broke you when you're like, nah, I can't let nobody else go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So LeBron did it. I see you doing it. And I'm so glad that you were able to hear, like, okay, this is what I'm passionate. I hate it when people don't know who they are. I hate it when they come into this church environment that's supposed to tell them who they are in the kingdom and they don't do it. Because, what I heard you say earlier, where I heard you going, I think you kind of changed directions, but what I heard you say at the onset is that, there's a difference between praise and worship and then just contemporary gospel music. Mm-hmm. One exalts and identifies the name of the Lord. And mm-hmm. in that name, all other things are named. We have our name in him. Mm-hmm. And then there's just music that, and I hear it now. Somebody clarified it for me, and I hear it now distinctly. You can hear when the music is just talking about you, and what you've done or how you've been broken, and never exalts the name of the Lord. I'm like, yeah, that's self-centered, and that's not going to get you going.
Mm-hmm. Or even the preaching, you go to church and preacher would be like, because God's going to do this for you, and you're going to get money, and you're going to get, and I'm like, that might not be true. Why y'all telling these, don't tell the people that, because that might not be
what the Lord said. Right.
And that thing grinds my gears. It's the whole thing. It's not just the music, it's the whole thing. I get into a church and I hear preachers start talking about, well, me this and I this, and God's gonna do this for you, and God's gonna give you this. And it's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
You seeking his hand and not seeking his face. There's a difference.
Exactly. And we've mistaken this worship as we've mistaken worship. Like we've mistaken music for worship.
Yeah. I was like, Prophet was just telling this to me. Yep.
We worshiping because we singing.
Worship is your whole life though.
Right.
It's a sacrifice at that.
Or you worshiping what you think that you can get. It's gonna take us down the road. We're about to go down a rabbit hole. We're talking about talent. We're talking about talent right now.
No, but it all relates, because at this point, Ashia, I need you to see, because I think I already started tapping into it too, because the Spirit is definitely present. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, agreeing as touching. Because earlier I said that, hey, look, I see your ministry is just expanding beyond music now, right? I see your ministry getting into worship, getting into this lifestyle transformation, right?
Okay.
And using the elements of what you've learned from the music industry, and seeing now that, hey, this is not just relative to the music sector of the church. This is now relevant to the church itself. And so I see you, you're saying like, oh, people are telling you should have blown up now. You should have had an album, this, that, and the third. Your albums, the content of your album is being reshaped, even in this hour, where your musicianship and your ability to both write and receive songs that are uplifting God, and then God's people within it, though, to identify him and identify who they are in him, is going to be transformative for the music industry and for the church mountain in general.
Wow.
Because when it's driven by this passion that you've identified, that you've self-identified, then you won't lose focus. When it's like, hey, you know how music goes, like, hey, look, you need a song that's going like get this one, people jump in. Like, no, that's not how this should work though. If I get people jumping, it's going to be because they are glorifying our Father in heaven and understanding who they are in it. I mean, the other thing that I've heard in what you've said today is why the Kingdom Advancement Center exist in the first place. Because we're like, hey, look, yeah, the man of God or the woman of God that's behind the pulpit for, whatever Sunday that you come, that's all cool and good and everything. But we're not going anywhere as a church until we get a mass movement in the people, though. Like when the people who are in the congregation begin to understand, I got something special to offer too. Not that they're going to start clamoring for the pulpit, because everybody not meant to be on the pulpit. Everybody that puts their hand on a basketball ain't going to get to LeBron's level and be able to represent the United States, when they have the Olympics. But there is another lane that they have that can be actualized once they're like, you know what, it's not just the person behind, because those numbers are limited, but it's the man. This number in the audience is so massive, and if each of them were equipped and realized who they were, oh yeah, we will move the needle real fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, that's genius, and I see you going towards that mark and what you've done and what you are yet to do.
Yes, I love it. I receive it. I receive that.
So I mean, that's the extent of it. Ashia, I know that you have your hand in a couple of different things. I do want you to, I want you to have an opportunity to just tell us what you're doing. Where can we find you? I know you got a book out because I helped you publish it. So
actually, I have it sitting right here.
Nice. That's what I'm talking about.
But yes, I do have a book out. It's called Matters of the Heart, a 30-day journal of healing, peace, and faith. I think it's going to be really cool and enjoyable for you. There's places you can write, places you can reflect, scriptures, reflections, everything's in here. Quotes, really cool stuff, prayerfully transformative things. And then also in the meantime, in between time, I'm actually working to start. It's so funny. I'm actually working on an EP. So that's the music side of things. So I will have an EP with a couple of songs coming out soon.
Okay.
But also I am working on what I'm calling a pop-up Bible study, which I think will be a really, really cool situation. It'll be random dates throughout the year. I might pop up at a cafe, have people come, RSVP, sit in, and, we'll just have conversation kind of like we're doing now. And then talk about how we can maneuver biblically, but realistically in 2022 in our lives. And I think because there's so many people, not just in church, but outside of church, who are searching and seeking and trying to figure out who they are. I feel like what better way to fulfill that great commission than to take this knowledge and the opportunity to them. So you might find me on the lawn on downtown DC. We'll get together and we'll talk and we'll study the word of God. Or you might find me at a restaurant, and you will come and see. So I'm developing this idea and developing how to strategically make this happen throughout the year.
That's pretty dope. You are walking in it. So let me ask you this again so you can be more definitive. Ashia, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
Yes.
Absolutely so.
I consider myself a genius.
All right. That's what I want to hear. My job is done. This has been Reggie Key. I am your host for Manu Forti Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I'm your host, motivational speaker, author, publisher, all that. And this has been my
all the
genius
things.
guest, all things. This has been my genius guest, Ashia Minister, Ashia Bello. And it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.